but at
It is the Supreme Court of the United States that has weighed in. And do you consider the Supreme Court not to be a legitimate source of decision-making?
Of course, the Supreme Court is the highest court in the land.
Then why are you not following the Supreme Court's understanding of the Constitution and the law?
We are following all laws and the Constitution.
Then why have you frozen $1.7 billion in EJ grants illegally and unconstitutionally?
They are neither illegal or unconstitutionally frozen, Senator.
Are they legally frozen?
Yes, Senator.
Under what authority of the law?
Senator, Congress appropriates funding, and then...
As you can tell from my opening statement, I'm very concerned about the issue of impoundments. Are you familiar with the concept?
Of course, Senator.
You understand that it involves freezing funds that are to be allocated by law?
Senator, I'm familiar with the impoundments. I also understand we're having this conversation in the middle of the fiscal year as opposed to after the fiscal year.
Do you understand that the Constitution of the United States assigns the power of the purse to Congress, and do you follow that understanding?
Absolutely.
So you understand that when you impound funds, you are violating the law?
No, Senator. We are going to follow all statutory obligations, and we will abide by all laws.
But you're not. You're impounding funds against the law.
We absolutely disagree with you very strongly.
And the courts have also found it's not just against the law, it's unconstitutional.
If you're citing a particular district court judge, Senator, that's one thing. But there's a lot of district court judges coming up with their own interpretations of the law. That'll go through litigation processes, but at
it is the Supreme Court of the United States that has weighed in. And do you consider the Supreme Court not to be a legitimate source of decision-making?
Of course, the Supreme Court is the highest court in the land.
Then why are you not following the Supreme Court's understanding of the Constitution and the law?
We are following all laws and the Constitution.
Then why have you frozen $1.7 billion in EJ grants illegally and unconstitutionally?
They are neither illegal or unconstitutionally frozen, Senator.
Are they legally frozen?
Yes, Senator.
Under what authority of the law?
Senator, Congress appropriates funding, and then say if the Biden administration is in place last year and they're at the beginning of the fiscal year, they might apply their own administration's policy priorities. So they might decide to send money to, say, the state of Alaska, and they might include aspects of fighting for equity or education instead of remediation.
But it wasn't the Biden administration that passed this law, it was Congress. And so this is in the law as written and as signed by his president, and yet you're defying it.
Senator, it would be important that the premise of your question, I mean, we're going to have to just disagree as strongly as possible.
You've also frozen the greenhouse gas reduction funds, again, illegally and unconstitutionally. Are you going to
neither
follow
illegally or unconstitutionally, Senator?
Well, we now have several court decisions that have said you have acted, and you referred to district court decisions, but you don't agree with those district courts?
Senator, if you're referring to a district court decision that was then stayed by the D.C. Circuit, then I would also encourage you to look at the appeals process, which is important. And as you referenced earlier in a prior question, how important it is to look at the Supreme Court. Well, then that message that you would be making to the D.C. District Court judge is that the D.C. District Court judge didn't even have jurisdiction over that case and it belonged inside the Court of Federal Claims. I agree with you how important it is to consider the decisions of the Supreme Court.
So there is one district court decision you abided by, and that was related to the clean school buses. If other district courts say that this is an illegal impoundment, an unconstitutional impoundment, will you follow the findings of those district courts, or will you simply appeal it upwards?
We will abide by all laws and the United States Constitution at all times.
Well, again, the administration has responded to some district court decisions by saying we will simply appeal it. We'll seek a stay and an appeal. Will you follow, when a district court says you've illegally impounded funds, will you follow that district court decision?
Well, as you pointed out, Senator, the Supreme Court is the highest court in the land. So if a district court judge makes a decision, we are not going to assume that the United States Supreme Court is going to agree with that district court.
Even though the Supreme Court has repeatedly ruled that impoundments are unconstitutional. So your decision is to simply appeal to the Supreme Court seeking a different decision this time around?
Well, I know that we're talking about hypotheticals of district court decisions to come, but as far as the district court decisions
it's actually not hypothetical because we already have a series of district court decisions saying that this is illegal and unconstitutional.
And as far as the district court decisions that have been made, it's important to note, as I stated a minute ago, the district court judge decision that you're referencing in the D.C. Circuit was instantly stayed by the D.C. Circuit.
Do you understand that impounding funds essentially makes the appropriation power of Congress very difficult? We have to reach decisions about funding that is important to Alaska, to Oregon, but also to every region of the country. And if then we strike this law, we strike these decisions to help address environmental issues in every part of the country, and then the executive comes along and says, we want the power of the purse, we're going to treat these laws as suggestions, we're going to freeze these funds for programs we don't like, or regions we don't like, or congressional districts we don't like, that completely undermines the dialogue and the ability of here in Congress to produce bipartisan bills?
Senator, I don't know if on either side of the dais I've ever heard in one round of question more premise of questions that I possibly disagree with. I refuse to waste $1 of tax dollars, period.
Since you are violating both the law and the Constitution, will you follow your oath? And if you can't follow your oath, will you resign from your office?
Yeah. Senator, listen, you like to preface your questions with declaring everything unconstitutional and illegal. We couldn't possibly disagree more strongly with what you're saying. What I do believe would be illegal is for me to play along where I'm seeing unqualified recipients getting funding, where I see an entity like a $2 billion recipient, Power Forward Communities, that gets $100 of GGR funds in 2023, and then they get $2 billion in 2024. When I see self-dealing and conflicts of interest, loading up recipients of people who are Biden officials and Obama officials and Democrat donors, when I see wording of financial agent agreements and account control agreements that tie the hands of the EPA behind its back, will I play along with that? No, absolutely not, because this is the good.
In which case you should resign, because the president is involved in self-dealing at a level we have never seen on these crypto.
Senator, if I refuse to waste money, I should resign?
Madam Chair, I will just conclude by saying this issue of impoundments is an extraordinary challenge. The Supreme Court has ruled twice. The Constitution is clear. You took an oath to the Constitution, and it's extremely destructive of our legislative process for you to be engaged in this.
Let's move to Senator Fisher.
What just unfolded in that hearing room is something the American people rarely get to see so starkly. A senator accusing a government official, to his face, of violating the law and the Constitution. Jeff Merkley didn't mince words. He didn't dress it up. He flat out said that what Lee Zeldin and his allies are doing, freezing billions of dollars that Congress has already allocated, is illegal and unconstitutional. And make no mistake, this isn't just a technical squabble about paperwork. This is about the very foundation of how our democracy works. Let's slow down and unpack it, because it's easy for conversations like this to get lost in legal jargon. At the heart of it all is one of the bedrock principles of American democracy. Congress controls the power of the purse. That means it is not up to the president, it is not up to cabinet officials, and it is not up to unelected bureaucrats to decide where federal money goes once Congress has made a law and the president has signed it. That's the deal. That's the Constitution. So when an administration takes that money that has been legally passed into law, and simply refuses to spend it, that's called an impoundment. And here's what's critical to understand. The Supreme Court has already ruled multiple times that impoundments are unconstitutional. Why? Because they let the executive branch essentially override Congress. They allow a president to treat laws as optional. And once that door is open, democracy starts to unravel. Think about it in everyday terms. Imagine your city council passes a law to fund repairs to schools in your community. It goes through all the proper channels, the mayor signs it, and the funds are allocated. But then the city treasurer says, well, I don't like that project. I'm just not going to release the money. That's not oversight. That's sabotage. And that's exactly what's happening here, only on a national scale with billions of dollars at stake. And what's even more alarming is what kind of money is being frozen. We're talking about $1.7 billion in environmental justice grants meant to clean up pollution in communities, to fight climate change, to improve public health in places that have been ignored for far too long. We're talking about greenhouse gas reduction funds, money that was supposed to help build a safer, cleaner future for our children. These aren't abstract numbers. They're projects that affect real people's lives: cleaner air, healthier neighborhoods, a more stable climate. Yet when Senator Merkley pressed Lee Zeldin, asking under what authority they froze this money, there was no clear answer, just deflection, legal hair splitting, and dismissals of court rulings they didn't like. That should set off alarm bells, because when officials start treating the courts as optional and Congress as a nuisance, what you're witnessing is not just a policy disagreement, it's an assault on the rule of law. This is why Merkley's line of questioning matters so much. He connected the dots. If the executive can block spending on environmental justice today, what's to stop them from blocking Medicare funds tomorrow, or disaster relief for communities hit by hurricanes, or Social Security checks? The precedent is devastating. Once you let the president decide which laws to follow and which to ignore, Congress is reduced to a suggestion box. And let's be honest, this isn't just about constitutional principles, it's about corruption and priorities. The official tried to argue that he was preventing waste, that money was going to the wrong hands. But history tells us that when administrations freeze funds, it often has less to do with waste and more to do with punishing political opponents or rewarding allies. It becomes about power, not principle, and that should terrify anyone who values fairness and accountability. Merkley was right to call it out for what it is. He said it plainly. If you cannot uphold your oath to the Constitution, then you should resign. Because public service isn't about partisan games. It isn't about protecting donors or currying favor with the president. It's about the law and it's about the people. And here's the bigger lesson we should take from this. Democracy only survives when we enforce its rules. When we allow officials to bend those rules, to claim authority they don't have, or to shrug off constitutional obligations, democracy doesn't collapse all at once. It erodes piece by piece, hearing by hearing, frozen fund by frozen fund, until one day the checks and balances that keep power in the people's hands are gone. That's why this matters. That's why you need to stay engaged, stay vocal, and never let power go unchecked. Because at the end of the day, democracy only works if we fight to keep it alive.